Hi guys, Nat here. I am recovering. I caught COVID a few weeks back and it has taken me a while to get better. While I was recovering, I couldn't craft very much, but I could peruse Pinterest and really make the most of my awake time looking at Pinterest. One of the things that I found was this little chick bag, and I think it's just the cutest little bag for Easter and something perfect that we can do on the Cricut. So when we go over to the blog over here, it's on the Make It and Love It blog. Lots of ads, sorry about that. I thought this was absolutely fantastic. It's such a cute little idea, and she has a pattern down here that you can follow. Let's go down, here we go. So you could right click on this and download the image and send it over to the machine as a JPEG, do some tidy up and that sort of thing, or even put it through one of those converters and have it convert for you into a JPEG or a PNG, even SVG, but then all of these little letters will come out as individual letters. Or if you would like, I'm going to pop a little link and I will show you the one that I have made. So I have made a similar pattern, but what I've done, instead of using her pattern, which if we have a look in my projects, I have downloaded and I popped it in there, and as I was playing with her pattern around a little bit, I was like, do you know what? A lot of these images are already in Cricut Design Space, and I could easily make something up myself, Cricut Design Space, and then I can share that with you free of charge. You don't have to worry about converting it. Similar design, but I've used Cricut Access images instead. So the square, which is the rectangle, that's that one's one of those free ones you get if you don't have Cricut Access. The little wings came from this ducky here, so it is a Cricut Access one, the little wings, and then the feet and the beak and the eyes came from this sitting chick, and then the font. So there's no actual font in the finished project, but what I've done is I've popped some little notes just up the top here so that when you do open it up, you can have a look at it and go, oh, okay, I remember she mentioned something like that. So let's go into customize and have a little look. Okay, so now that it's loaded, I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see. I have a little block here that just says this pattern. Whoop, this pattern includes a 6mm or 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you're using felt for the wings and feet, you will need to use the offset feature to go -6mm or -1/4 inch to remove the seam allowance and delete the back wings, because if you're doing felt you only need one set of wings, you don't need two. So to do that, I'm going to grab this one over here. I'm just moving it away so you can see over here what changes we're making, and we're going to put a minus sign here and -6mm. Wait for it to have its thing. There we go. And now it's taken away the seam allowance. And it would be this wing here that you would want to cut out of your felt. And you'd do that for the legs and the other wing as well. And that's just purely because this is the front of cotton fabric that I've used, and this will be the back. So you use two pieces to make up one wing, whereas with felt you'd only need the one. Okie dokie. So I've also put here the front and the back, just so you can have a little play with some of the ideas. I know the feet look like they're in the wrong direction, but when we go through and we sew it on, we're actually going to sew them so that they sit like this, and we'd actually sew the wings. Let's flip those so we have a squizzy. We'll sew it so the wings sit like this, and then we sew down the sides and bottom and up the other side, and then we turn it inside out, and then our little ducky bag is smicko. Okay, so when you're going to send this to the mat, you don't need to have the writing. Oop. So we can highlight that writing and get rid of it. What's going on? There we go. So we don't need the writing, and another way you could have done is press the little eyeball over here and hidden it. Now we're going to cut out the wings. I have made it so that the eyes are actually iron-on. If you're going to applique your eyes and your beak instead, you'll need to add a little offset if you're doing needle turn applique, and if you're not, you just pop a little bit of heat and bond on your fabric before you cut, and then you cut it. Take the paper off the back of the fabric before you pop it on your mat, because your mat will like to eat the, well, it doesn't eat, but it will like to hold on to the fabric, not fabric, paper, sorry. It'll hold on to the paper of your heat and bond, and then it doesn't like letting go of the paper. You'll need to use warm soapy water to get rid of the paper. So always take the paper off the back of your heat and bond first. But if you're going to do iron-on, then you can leave these as they are, or you can come back later. I'm actually making a whole bunch because I'm making some for my nieces and my nephews and my little cousins, and I think out of all the fabric I've got, I think it works out I'm going to get 11 or 12 of these little ducky bags. And so I will do all of the eyes and the beak all at the same time. And when I'm at the demo on Sunday, so I'll be at Queanbeyan this coming Sunday and Gungahlin the following Sunday, the 27th of March, I will be putting little names on the little bags as part of the demonstration of how easy it is to personalize things, especially with cute little bags like this, or maybe if you want to personalize a teddy, like a bunny bear, like a bunny teddy, or the ears of like those bunny ear headbands. It's really easy. Anywho, got off track. So right now I'm going to delete the eyes and the beak because I don't need them. Alrighty, I'm going to send it over to the machine to make it, and we can see here it's making one, but because of the way I have my fabric and how I've got a nice big long piece of it, I'm going to get the most I can out of a long mat. So I'm going to be using a long mat. If you don't have a long mat, you can cut it similar to this. I would even, if I was using a short mat, I would turn this one around and pop in here, just so that when it comes time to cut the fabric, I've got a nice clean edge rather than having this sort of little knobbly bit that was down the bottom. So I can just trim straight across there and then set it up for my next mat. So that would be nice and simple, but for the yellow you can actually get 4 pieces, and we'll move that to another mat over here. Now again, the reason I'm moving, where did you go here? The reason I'm moving this mat is again for fabric space and use, just to manage the space and the usage of the fabric. If I were to leave this one down the bottom of this here, I would have had again a weird knobby bit here of the fabric, which then becomes harder to use because it's not as much. So now having these 4 sit like this, I can just simply, when it's finished cutting, I can snip here and then here and then here, and then I've got another full width of fabric, or another piece ready to go. There's no trimming it down or worrying what I'm going to do with any offcuts, because now I've created a nice neat edge. Okie dokie. So we're going to send it over to the machine to cut it, and I will be popping this one on a longer mat, which is the 61 centimeter mat, sorry. And we can see there that my little one that I had put on the side, because I changed the size of the mat, it went back to its default layout. And I could change things here if I wanted to change things. So for example, there's this one here down the bottom, and again that would cut out that piece, and I'd end up with this piece here and a missing piece here. So what I'm going to do is try and see if I can get it. There we go. See if I can get it at the side. Just that way I've got, again, that nice straight edge. After it's finished cutting, I've got a nice straight edge for my next project. So we're going to send that over to the machine and we'll cut it, and I will be back. So I've cut this and I'm going to get my mat, and you can see my mat is dirty. It's quite dirty. I'm not going to bother with it. I'm not too concerned about it. You can see with all the cross hatching how many little different quilts I have made with this mat. There's a lot of squares, and I dare say binding and 60-degree diamonds based on the cuts that are on this map, which would be the quilt that I made when I was doing the Journey to Nebula, which was a Jaybird quilt, which is a funny story. I tell people this all the time. I was in her Jaybird Quilts Journey to Nebula quilt along, and I had ordered this. I couldn't find anywhere nearby that had it. It was the peak of COVID lockdown, and so I had to buy it from the States. It was expensive, and then the shipping was expensive, and it wasn't turning up, and the quilt along was getting more and more involved, and further along I was so worried I was going to fall behind that I opened up her pattern and saw they had a template for the design if you wanted to use their cardboard template to cut out, and all I did was I scanned that and made it into a PDF. Oh, sorry, not a PDF, a JPEG, and then I put it straight into Design Space, and I cut all of my pieces out. I had cut out and done, I think, 2 or 3 weeks into that project before my ruler turned up, and I was so happy with the way Cricut had done it that I haven't even opened the ruler to finish the rest of the Jaybird Quilts Journey to Nebula. I did it all with my Cricut because it did it great, and it cut my corners as well. So if you're using a rotary cutter, one of the things that you'll find here is that you cut and then you cut and then you ended up with a little triangle, which then you have to tip off your triangle pieces. Cricut did it all for me, and it was just fantastic. And while I know people say, you know, there's different machines out there that cut fabric and they cut more layers, blah blah blah, this gives me the biggest range of freedom, which is why I love the Cricut for my fabric things. Okay, so we're going to load that into our machine, and we're going to get ready to cut. Okay, so I've lined it up and I've popped it in. We'll have a look at how we're going. So I'm cutting the yellow panel, the first yellow panel, and when it sucks it in, you might be able to see if it takes it in that I've just got the tail end of my fabric just hanging off the end of the mat, and that's fine. It's no concerns at all. And when we changed the one of the rectangles up so that we made those 4 rectangle groups, it'll mean that I have less wasted. I am going to change that mat over and put in the orange, and we will go and cut. So I'm just trimming here, so then I'm ending up with another usable piece. So this is 30 centimeters by however centimeters. Wasn't a full 30. Maybe it is. Yeah, 30 by 30 almost. And that's what I have left over from my width of fabric, and I've got 4 more squares, 4 more bags, sorry. Okay, I'm going to do the orange one, and I'll have a video of you guys watching the orange one cut, and then we will go to the sewing machine. Okay, awesome. All my little pieces are ready, and they're all cut out perfectly. Okay, so I've got all my pieces cut out. I actually had enough fabric to cut out another 4 bags. So this is the product for 8 bags. Oh, you can hear the guinea pigs. I'm going to put these pieces aside. These are the wings and the feet. Put those aside, and I'm just going to overlock around each one of my rectangles. I'm overlocking these ones. I didn't overlock these ones. What I did instead was I ironed a 1/4 inch seam, and then I sewed that seam together on each side. And that works out really easy too. I'm doing quite a few of them, so I'm just trying to be a bit more active with the not having to iron so many of those little seams. If you're only doing 1 or 2 bags, you can iron them. Another option is, if you've only got a sewing machine, is to do a zigzag stitch along the edge and then roll it over and you're right to go. Okay, so I'm going to overlock all of my squares, and then once I've done that, we will come back. Okay, so I finished overlocking all of my rectangles, and I can start on my feet and my wings, and I'm just going to sew a 1/4 inch seam around this side, around the bottom of the foot, and then I'm going to stop on this side, so I leave an opening so I can turn the fabric out. One of the important steps with this is, if you change the ratios to make this bag smaller, it's best to do the feet out of felt so that you don't have to turn it in, because it's a very tiny little opening to turn this one in, so it can be a little bit tricky to turn your feet if you make the bag any smaller than it currently is. Okie dokie, let's get started on this, and then we will come back and we will turn some of our feet in and our wings in, and then we will get started on making our bag. Okay, so now I've got all of these pieces sewn together, I need to turn them out. I'm going to have some problems with the tips if I don't trim them. You can do them with just little, just to cut the tips off, or you can use, what's the other thing? Pinking shears, there we go. And when you do that, then the little curve will go quite nice and not give you too much bulk. So I'm just going to take out some of that bulk and then turn it right side out, and I'll use the back of a paintbrush and just push them out. So now I have a wing, and the wing's complete, and I can go ahead and press that. I'm not too worried about the edge here, because that's going to get caught up in the edge of the little bag. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of them. This one, the little legs, they are slightly harder, and when you pull them out you may end up getting some of the stitches coming out. That's okay. The little leg has a lot of space, so it doesn't matter if a little bit of it comes out. I do find that with this one it's a little bit easier to get it started and then use chopstick or your pointy tool. Some people actually have a proper turning tool for this kind of thing. I don't, not for any particular reason, just my craft room is already full of everything. So you can use all sorts of things. Another thing you can use is, some people have had success turning things out with tweezers. I'm not good enough with tweezers to do that. I also find the Cricut tweezers are fantastically grabby, but they don't sort of allow for the pulling motion, and then the other tweezers that I have are too sharp to do proper pulling. It'll actually end up piercing my fabric. Let me see if I can grab them. These ones, they're too sharp, they'd actually pierce the fabric, so I can't use those. So that's how you get the little foot out, and press your little, I love this mini press. I have the big press, and it's fantastic for big quilts and for doing shirts and things like that, but this mini press, it's so easy, and it just sits in his little holder, and turning on, heats up quickly, off he goes. He sits in his little holder, like that holder, like it's on, and the holder is not too hot. I can touch that. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do after I've turned out all of my wings and my feet is I'm going to give the rectangle, a bit of a press just to get these little bits out, and I'm going to run off the top of the drawstring will be the next step. So that'll happen with these ones. So I'll come back once I have finished all of the wings and the legs. Okay, So I've turned these all out and I've pressed them, and I've got all my feet and all my wings. I lightly press these as well, and now the next part is to prepare for the drawstring channel. So I'm going to fold over the overlocked or serged seam, so I'm just going to fold that over. That gives you, because my serge line is 1/4 inch, so 6 millimeters. So I'm going to just fold that over and run a stitch right across there. I don't know if you can see it, it's serged, it is. And I'm going to do that for each of them. Okay, so I have done my little hem on this, rolled that little hem over, and I measured this one out, so just took down to the 0. I'm keen beans to get this finished. So this is 14 centimeters and down to the 0, and what I'm going to do is just use my fabric marker, and I could have had the Cricut do this at the start, but I don't want a big mark. I just want a little tiny, just sort of placeholder, really. And if you don't want to use an erasable marker or a washable marker, you could pop a pin in here. So what we're going to do is we'll end up with a piece that has, oh, the light's very bright, sorry about that. We'll end up with a piece that is 14 centimeters, and then we have the mark. Okay, so I have just completed one, and just to be extra careful, I'm going to do a take 2 and make sure that I have the best quality video for you guys. I am trying my best. I'm a one-woman show when it comes to these sort of things, so if you don't see this one, I guess the first one was great. If you see this one, the first one didn't go so well, but that's okay. It could just be that maybe I had this out of line, or who knows. Anywho, so we're going to grab our feet and our wings, and we're going to get ready to make it. So we're up to this point, we've got the rolled hem on the top, and I've marked out on my pen where the little edges are, and that's the 14 centimeter mark from the bottom. So right sides together is what we're doing right now. So if I turn this over, I'll be able to see the blue pen, and on the top here I'll be able to see the blue pen. So that means wrong sides facing down this one, wrong sides facing up on this one, and both of these pieces and where we're laying the feet will be the right side of our fabric. If you're using a patterned piece, you'll need that information quite handy. If not, it doesn't really matter, except you want your hemmed piece on the inside, so when you roll it over you don't see your hem. Okay, so our little feet go this way, and the long sides here are on the outside, so they curve in a little bit. And don't worry too much about any overhang here. We're going to sew along this overlocked edge. If you didn't do an overlocked edge, that overlocked edge for me is my 1/4 inch or 6 mil. Hello, Oren. Okay, and place the wings. And place this one on top. And they should, if your measurements line up, they should line up pretty good. So I've got a little bit of a gap there, but that's okay because that's going to be sucked up in the hem. The reason we had that, oh, I've got it upside down. The reason we had that mark is because that mark is exactly 14 centimeters from the bottom. If we have a slightly bigger channel for our ribbon, it doesn't matter. But what it means is when we pull this down, both of these are coming down to that same 14 mark, and any sort of gap, see how you've got the top of that, yeah, there's about maybe 2 mil on this side. It's going to be absorbed once we turn that channel over. Okay, now I'll take my clips, I'm going to clip in my feet and my wings. and I'm not too concerned about the pieces hanging out because the little feet had were a little more difficult to turn out because it's a smaller opening. I, in the file, added extra length to the bottom of the feet. This way you don't have to worry about this being frayed, or some of them are really frayed. Some of them I had to give a bit of a talking to. This one.
Hello.
Okay. Now I'm going to turn it over and just double check that I haven't got anything clipped the wrong way. Okay. Now I'm going to go in and I'm back stitching from here, which is my blue mark, all the way down, over and back up. And if I follow the serged mark, I will have a beautiful edge, and that'll give me that perfect seam. Okay, let's go. So what I've got now is I've got my hem all the way around, and what I can do is I can have a double check to make sure I didn't go too far in. If you go too far in on your overlocked stitch, you will actually see some of your overlocked stitches on the front, and mine look good. So at this point I'm going to trim those feet down to match the rest of the fabric. Okay, then I'm going to take my iron and I'm going to press that hem. Oops, sorry, I'm going to take my iron and I'm pressing, so this is from the line up to the top, I'm pressing that in. That gives me a neat edge there, and when I fold it over, I'll have that neat edge. If you're making your bags out of a different fabric, you can always go to the Cricut Easy Press Heat Guide and double check the type of fabric that you're using to get the heat settings. So I'm using Coors cotton, and that's the medium setting. Actually, talking about the easy presses, I saw while I was unwell that they've brought out new easy presses. How fancy is that? Okay, now we bring that down to our mark, which is there, and click. Bring this one down to the mark, which is there, and click. On the other side. So when we sew this line straight across, it'll actually keep those little hem pieces tucked in for our drawstring. Okay, now that I've got those down to their little seams, I'm going to open up just one of them and sew across this line here. Just making sure that my little hemmed pieces are tucked in. Snippy snip. Okay, turning him back inside out, and I can go back in if I wanted to and clip that corner, the corner right here, so then it sits nice and flush. But these are going to be filled with eggs and they'll be rounded anyway. If I wanted them to be nice and flat, perhaps I would put in gift cards in them or something like that, then maybe I would be a bit more precious about the corners as well. Okay, the corners are poked out and our little feet are done. Our little drawstring area is done, our little drawstring channel is done, and we're ready to put our face on. So I'm in the file that I've got the eyes and the beak, and they are as iron-on projects, and I've done that so that when you do that, you can either at the top pop a name, or on the belly of the little chick you can pop a little name. Okay, so let's cut that out, and while it might not look like it's cut out, it has. I'm just going to quickly pick this up and trim around so that I can continue to use this. I'll use little scraps, and there's even times when I've done like the snap map feature, and I've just done you know, a couple of letters, and there's enough space in here to do even here and here there's enough space to do letters, so I will keep scraps. Anything bigger than 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters I will keep and use again. The ones that I can't keep, I will pop those in to my recycling, plastic recycling, and they go in the soft plastic recycling that you can drop down to your supermarket for recycling. Okay. What I've done here is when I trimmed around the eyes, I actually just trimmed in between that channel as well, because that's a lot of wasted space, and I'm very particular about using as much of my supply as I can. And while I probably can't get much out of this bit, I can definitely get letters out of this bit, and even another set of eyes or something like that out of this piece, so I'll keep that as well. And then I'll put them back on my mat, just so that I have a handy, surface to help hold my vinyl. Oh, sorry, I bumped the camera. And then it just gives that little extra set of, well, not hands, but kind of. Okay, so there is our eyes and our little beak, and they're ready to go onto our bag. Okay, so for this one, when I'm at my demo on the weekend, I will pop a little name just at the bottom here. So I'm going to put the eyes and the beak a little bit higher, just so that I know that I've got enough space down there for a name. Okay. So the backing film of Cricut vinyl is tacky, so it will want to hold on to your fabric, but it won't stick. Oh, onto the camera again. I have to move that. Here we go. You also want to make sure that any of your carrier film, which is this backing film here, doesn't go underneath, and you're not accidentally ironing some of your iron-on onto that. If you needed to, you could trim down. Again, just remember, the more you trim down, the less tack it's going to have on the fabric. If you do need to add extra tack to hold it down, here we go. You can use the Cricut heat resistant tape, and just tape down a few little pieces here and there, and I reuse that tape as well. A lot of people always a bit I don't know what the right word is, but when I've done demos and I use the tape and I snip it off, and then I'll have I have a quilting ruler out in my demo kit, and I'll put the tape on the back of my quilting ruler, and I bring it home and I use it again. May as well. And also it can go in the soft plastics recycling as well, so I don't want it to end up in landfill unnecessarily. Okay. I think I'm happy with that. Now, these will move around if I put too much pressure on it, so I have to be mindful that I don't want it to move around. If I was less experienced, I guess, or if I was a little bit more worried that it's going to be too much movement, I definitely would use the tape. Definitely. Okay, now we're using the mini press. This is vinyl onto cotton, so we want on the second feature, and it's going to warm up. And it doesn't take very long to warm up. Pop it in its little housing. Here we go. It's already heated. So they say to use constant movement with the mini press for 25 seconds. So what I did first was I just gave it a nice slow movement down, just so that I knew it was all stuck. Okay. I'm going to have a quick look, make sure that, see how I've got that sort of look on there. It's sort of that little air bubbles that gets when the iron-on has stuck to the material. We want to keep that iron-on onto the fabric until it's cooled down to touch. So all Cricut vinyl is, or Cricut iron-on, the everyday iron-on, it's cool peel. So that means peel it after it's cooled down. So you need to wait for it to cool down. And if you're a little bit impatient, waiting for it to cool down on the Cricut Easy Press mat, it'll take longer because the mat reflects heat back up. So if you want it to cool down a little bit faster, take it off the mat because that mat's still warm. Like winter morning, wake up and you're all warm and toasty in bed type warm. Okay, so I'm going to check. There we go. And if I was worried that it wasn't sticking down, because you might remember that I mentioned that I wasn't 100% sure that this was Cricut vinyl, which means that different vinyls have different temperature requirements. I dare say that the orange wasn't Cricut vinyl, and one of the reasons I can tell, let me see if I can get it for you, there's a little bit of, see how it's puckered a little bit with the heat? Yeah, so that one may not have been Cricut vinyl, but it's not too bad. Like for a little person who's going to get a little bag, he or she is not going to mind at all that there's tiny little, and like I can't even get them up on the camera. There's like tiny, let me see. Oh, there you go. You could see some there. Just a little puckering, not puckering, like little mandarin skin, I guess. Yeah. But now that is done. Okay. I'm going to take my ribbon in my bobbin, sorry, and I'm going to thread my ribbon. Okay. So when we close up our bag, I can put a little note in it or a little something. Sorry about that, the mailman was at the door and my dogs had to say hello apparently. But while I was out there getting my mail, I thought I'd grab some chocolates to put in there, and I know that these aren't Easter eggs, but I have some cousins and nieces that will get little bars of chocolate anyway because they have their favourites. And okay, so we can pop some chocolates in there. That's probably way too many chocolates, but I wanted to make the bag big enough that you could put a medium-sized egg inside. There we go, all finished. You could tie that up. Oh, there we go. Tied up with a neater bow. Oh my gosh, I've pulled it the wrong way. So the idea is to have the knots get sucked up in the and remember I'll put fray stop on that, or a little bit of glue, or with the iron, a little lighter or something like that. There we go. Now you've got your little chick all done, all sorted. And I really hope that you guys enjoy this little project. The link to the project is down below. It'll take you straight to Design Space. I don't have an SVG file for it. I don't know how to make an SVG file. But I have made the file in Cricut Design Space, and I'm happy to share that file with you. And I look forward to seeing what you guys do with it. If you make one, let me know down below, or hit us up on one of our Facebook channels. So on Instagram, Crafted by Natalie. And I've got a Facebook group of the same name. And if you're in Australia, in the local Canberra area, I'm your Cricut ambassador for the Canberra area. So by all means, find us at Cricut Crafters Canberra, and you'll find all of our little projects, and we do a weekly craft along and things like that as well. Okie dokie, have a wonderful afternoon and enjoy your crafting. Bye.